This is part 2 of the delusional psychology of representative democracy. I was listing the 5 aptitudes that members of a community must have if democracy is to emerge. The 4th one, the one I was working on in the first tape, is that an orientation to utilitarian outcomes, that is, practical outcomes, where you can measure the results and you can divide it up so that you can get a little more or a little less. Something where people are not standing on principle. This involves comprehensive solutions. One current issue in the United States is the NAFTA treaty, the treaty by which the U.S. Permits goods from Canada and Mexico to enter without tariffs, and Canada and Mexico permit U.S. goods to enter. When it was adopted in the early 90s, it was promoted as something that would create employment both in the United States and Mexico, that it would be an advantage to both countries. And today it's blamed by some politicians and by a great many citizens who live in areas of high unemployment where manufacturing once existed and no longer does. At the same time, if this has created new jobs, those are less easy to identify. But mainly, the American system is one where people seek to subdue their opponents, where the idea is to win, to not lose. And so, if you can lie enough about there being no bad effects from NAFTA, you might be able to win over some support. At least that's the cover you use if you think in some way you'll benefit politically or economically. On the other hand, the people who use this as a political issue, who blame NAFTA, are also either deceived or lying. It's something that can emotionally arouse citizens who are in precarious economic situation. But the idea was there was never an attempt to say, okay, some people are going to lose their jobs and some people are going to benefit because there's trade both ways with Mexico, or we'll get employment based on trade somewhere else that's related to the system of trading. And so if you really wanted this and you really believed in it, then what Congress would have done is to set up a system of compensating those people temporarily who were damaged by it. I mean, a cynical attempt to get cheap manufacturing in a country that Mexico, which basically has a moribund economy. At the expense of American workers, then you could provide some sort of compensation or some sort of serious effort to provide them with better employment. But the American system doesn't reward that. And so the incentive is to lie. This is also the most pressing case today in the United States, has to do with energy policy, something that has been bungled for generations, and all we hear is blame. So, a comprehensive solution, one, uses real information. And where do you get information? Well, you get it from individuals who know something about, have specialized knowledge, or who know something about how something affects them. That is, in the Vermont town meetings, people could say how something was going to affect them or how they thought. And other people could get a sense of what would happen to their neighbors or to them based on information that they didn't previously have. And then people can act either in their own interest or in whatever interest they want if they have equal voices. Democracy is not a system that takes care of people, that takes care of the tired or the poor or the disadvantaged. Democracy can do that, but this is not inherently part of it. Democracy is a system by which people who feel like equals act in their own behalf, but act jointly with other people that they view as having an equally valid claim on happiness. The last aptitude is the desire to obtain consensus. That is, to have a system where people feel like they have a right to participate, they can participate, they have a voice, not a symbolic voice, not a voice of principle, but a voice of actually doing something that will get them benefits and other people benefits. If they have that, then there's likely to be a lot of voluntary compliance. There are laws in Houston governing where dogs can defecate and where they can't defecate. In the United States, there are 75 million dogs owned by people, and they generate 11 million tons of waste material. There are 90 million cats, and they generate about 3 million tons of waste material. Now, when I take my dog walking, who's going to monitor where he defecates? Well, the most likely person is me. And in general, I don't let him defecate on private property. If there's a house that's empty or an empty lot, that's a different matter. But since you can't have feces police roaming the streets constantly, it would be too expensive. Basically, you have to have rules that are fair, and it has to apply to neighbors whose rights you don't want to trample on. So I take some care in observing a law that probably can't really be enforced. That's what you call consensus. I think I've been treated fairly. The American culture is pro-pet and pro-dog and has been eminently fair. And so I feel like I have an obligation there. So we have a sense of equality, a sense that one should take initiative and be able to act on your own behalf, not be taken care of. A sense that you can make a difference, a sense that there are certain things where people need to act together because of interdependence, and that otherwise people should be able to make their own decisions. This has to do with one's psychological orientation. The fourth is the notion that we want practical solutions and we will try to have as few losers as possible, that we will seek positive sum outcomes. And the fifth is a sense of fairness so that people voluntarily follow laws. This is the end of part 2. There will be a part 3 in which I'll show what countries I think are democratic.